The wind screamed across the frozen plain of Varine. Snow blew in wild circles, turning the world white and gray. Lightning flashed through the clouds, not yellow or blue, but a strange violet that burned against the darkness. The storm was alive with plasma energy, the kind that could tear apart machines and crush communication lines. Inside a small metal hut stood a man named Terran. He was human, one of the few left behind to watch over the weather beacons that no one cared about anymore. The colony had failed years ago, but he had stayed. It was a quiet life, but quiet was safer than war, safer than the chaos of the cities that floated in orbit above. Terran moved quickly through the narrow hut. He sealed the airlocks, checked the generator, and secured his tools in the corner. His breath fogged in the cold air. The storm was coming faster than he had expected. He glanced at the monitor showing the beacon grid. The lights blinked weakly. He whispered to himself, "Hold together just one more night." Then came a sound that did not belong to the storm. It was a deep rhythmic pounding against the outer door. He froze. The nearest settlement was hundreds of kilometers away. No one should be out there. The pounding came again, louder this time. Terran grabbed the small plasma cutter he used for repairs and moved to the door. The external sensors were half fried by the storm, but one camera still worked. The screen showed blurred shapes moving in the snow, tall and armored, carrying long spears or weapons of some kind. Before he could decide, the emergency override light flashed red. Someone outside was trying to force entry. The system would either give or explode if he resisted. With a frustrated sigh, Terran opened the manual release and pulled the door inward. Cold air and snow rushed inside, followed by shadows that moved like hunters. 5 figures stepped through the doorway. They were tall, at least a head above him, with smooth helmets shaped like fangs. Their armor was scratched and covered with frost. The lead figure raised a clawed hand and spoke in a deep, steady voice. "Shelter," she said. The translator in Terran's wristband turned the sound into words. "We seek shelter. The storm kills all outside." Terran nodded quickly. "You can stay. Close the door fast." They obeyed without hesitation. The heavy door slammed shut and the hut fell into a tense silence broken only by the hum of the generator. The strangers removed their helmets one by one. Their faces were alien yet strangely familiar. Their eyes were large, yellow with slit pupils like a cat's. Their skin was smooth and patterned with faint stripes that shimmered in the dim light. The leader's gaze met his. "I am Rin of the Careth," she said. "These are my Huntresses. We thank you, human." Terran relaxed a little. He had heard of the Careth, a proud species known for their strength and skill in combat. They were hunters and explorers who traveled across systems seeking great beasts. Still, he had never expected to meet one, much less 5 of them in his hut during a storm. He motioned toward the heater. "Sit there. Warm yourselves. I'll get food and water." The Huntresses moved with grace even when exhausted. One of them, slightly smaller and younger, stumbled as she sat down. Terran noticed a long burn mark on her armor. Without thinking, he reached for his repair kit and said, "Hold still. I can fix that." The young huntress looked uncertain, but Rin nodded for her to allow it. Terran worked quickly, sealing the damaged section with a fusion patch. The armor hissed softly as the metal bonded. When he finished, the huntress stared at him with a strange expression. "You help strangers," she said slowly. "Why?" Terran smiled a little. "Because you needed help." The huntress tilted her head as if studying him. Her golden eyes caught the light of the heater. She whispered something in her own language, too soft for the translator to catch. Another huntress beside her laughed quietly and Rin gave a warning growl. The laughter stopped. They ate in silence for a while. Terran handed out nutrient packs and boiled water. The Careth sniffed the food suspiciously but eventually ate. They seemed grateful, though their posture stayed alert like wolves resting but ready to strike. After some time, Terran asked, "What were you doing out there in that storm?" Rin looked toward the window where the plasma winds flashed purple. "We hunt the sky serpent," she said, "a beast that flies within the lightning. It has killed many of our kind. We tracked it to this world, but the storm came too fast. We lost our ship's trail. We took shelter here to survive." Terran blinked. The sky serpent was a legend even among humans, a creature of plasma and shadow said to glide through magnetic storms and feed on energy. Most thought it was only a story. "You're telling me it's real?" he asked. Rin's eyes hardened. "It is real. Its claws tore through my sister's armor. We will kill it or die trying." Her words carried the weight of an oath. The others nodded in silent agreement. Terran could see the exhaustion in their movements but also their determination. He sat back feeling both admiration and unease. "You'll need to wait until the storm ends," he said. "Nothing can move in this weather." "We know," Rin replied. "Your shelter will hold?" "It's old," Terran admitted, "but it has survived worse." That night the storm hit with full force. The walls shook. Energy crackled along the metal supports. Terran checked the seals again and again, while the Huntresses sat around the heater sharpening blades and repairing gear. Their armor gleamed like polished bone. When he finally sat down, he noticed the young Huntress from before staring at him again. Her name, he learned from Rin, was Mira. She had quiet eyes but a sharp focus. When he met her gaze, she looked away quickly. The hours passed slowly. The storm howled like a living thing. At one point, a loud crash shook the hut and Terran jumped to his feet. A section of the outer antenna had broken loose. He moved toward the door, but Rin blocked his way. "You go out, you die," she said firmly. "I can fix it before it tears the panel," he insisted. "If it breaks the main feed, the heater dies. Then we all freeze." Rin looked at him for a long moment, then gave a short nod. "Mira, go with him." The two stepped into the storm through the secondary hatch linked by a safety cable. The cold bit into Terran's skin even through his suit. The air shimmered with electrical arcs. Mira moved like a shadow beside him, her eyes glowing faintly in the light of the storm. Together they reached the antenna. Terran worked fast, his hands numb, while Mira watched the ridges beyond. When a burst of plasma struck the ground nearby, she pulled him aside just in time. The shockwave passed, shaking the ground. "You are slower than I thought," she said, almost teasing. "Humans are not built for storms like this," he said, tightening a bolt. "Yet you do not run from it," she replied softly. He looked at her through the visor. "Someone has to keep the lights on." They finished the repair and hurried back inside. The warmth of the heater felt like a miracle. Rin gave a short nod of approval, though her eyes lingered on Mira's frost-covered armor. As they settled again, Terran heard a whisper behind him. It was Mira's voice, quiet but clear. "I saw him first," she said. "Mine." The words were not translated by his wristband, but he understood them somehow. The tone was possessive, almost protective. The other Huntresses glanced her way, and one smiled faintly before looking back at the fire. Rin said nothing. Terran pretended not to hear. He turned back to his tools, his thoughts uneasy. The Huntresses were strange, bound by honor and instinct. Whatever Mira's words meant, he decided it was better not to ask. The storm lasted for 2 full days. Outside, the world remained buried under snow and glowing ice. Inside the small metal hut, time moved slowly. The air was heavy with the sound of wind, the hum of the heater, and the faint rustle of alien armor. Terran spent most of the time checking systems, fixing broken circuits, and rationing supplies. The Huntresses sat near the heater, sharpening blades and cleaning their weapons. They spoke quietly in their own language, sometimes laughing, sometimes silent. The hut felt smaller with them inside, filled with their tall frames and sharp eyes. Rin, their leader, kept watch at the window. Her posture was calm but ready. Every few hours she looked toward Terran and asked about the storm's readings. He told her that the plasma waves were weakening but still too dangerous to go outside. During one quiet hour, Terran prepared more food. It was simple rations mixed with local roots that could survive the frozen soil. He handed the meal around. The Kareth women accepted it with a nod of respect. Their ways were strict and they rarely spoke when they ate. When they finished, Mira, the youngest Huntress, asked in a soft voice, "Human Terran, why do you live alone in this cold world?" Terran shrugged. "Someone has to keep the beacons working. They send weather data to the stations in orbit." "Do you have no pack?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Humans used to have many kinds of packs. Families, teams, cities. Mine scattered long ago." Mira tilted her head, studying him. "Kareth never live alone. A hunter without a pack loses her soul." Rin turned slightly at those words but said nothing. Her yellow eyes glowed faintly in the heater's light. Terran looked at Mira. "Then you are lucky to have one." Mira seemed about to reply, but one of the others spoke first. "Do not waste words, Mira. The storm still listens." They fell silent again. Terran returned to his tools, though his thoughts stayed restless. He could feel the weight of their presence, the quiet strength they carried. These women had faced things far greater than storms. Later, when the winds eased a little, Rin asked to see the beacon grid. Taryn showed her the display. The holographic map glowed pale blue, showing the signal towers spread across the region. 2 of them had gone dark. Your beacons could help us find the sky serpent, Rin said. Can they track large movement in the storm? They can if I rewire them, Taryn answered. But the range is limited. I would need to leave the hut and reset the southern relay. Rin nodded slowly. We will go when the storm allows it, he frowned. You plan to hunt again so soon? The creature will not rest, Rin said firmly. We lost its trail once because of the storm. We cannot lose it again. The hunt is our duty. Taryn admired her courage, but also saw how tired they were. You could rest longer. There's no rush. The beast will return when the storm's calm. Rin's expression softened slightly. Human, you think with patience. We think with promise. We swore to end the serpent before it reaches the colonies above. It feeds on energy. If it finds the orbital stations, thousands will die. We cannot fail. Taryn understood then that their mission was not just a hunt. It was protection. Their kind might be fierce, but they fought for a reason greater than pride. When night fell, the Kareth performed a quiet ritual. They placed their blades in a circle and drew small lines on the ground with glowing dust. Rin chanted low words that sounded like wind and thunder. Taryn watched in silence, not wishing to disturb them. When the ritual ended, Rin turned to him. This is the vow of the pack, she said. No one hunts alone. Each life belongs to the hunt and to the others. Taryn nodded in respect. It's a good code, Mira smiled faintly. It is more than a code. It is what keeps us alive. Later, as the others rested, Taryn worked near the generator. The power lines flickered again and he knelt to adjust them. Mira joined him quietly. You work like a maker, she said. Quick hands, steady heart, he laughed softly. Just a repairman. Not just, she said. You fix things even when they seem broken. Taryn looked at her. You talk like someone older than you look. Mira's smile faded. The hunt makes us grow fast. A sudden flash outside drew their attention. The storm's light shifted to a deep green, and the air crackled with sound. Rin and the others stood quickly, weapons ready. Taryn ran to the window. Far in the distance, something huge moved across the horizon, a faint shape glowing and twisting like smoke in the lightning. It was gone as soon as it appeared. The sky serpent, Rin said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with focus. It is near. Taryn felt a chill. It survived the storm? It lives inside the storm, Rin replied. It draws strength from it. They watched until the lights faded again. The Huntresses began checking their armor and gear, moving with silent precision. Taryn said, If you go after it now, you'll walk into death. Wait until dawn, Rin shook her head. We wait for calm, but not for long. Every moment gives it distance. Mira stepped closer to Taryn. You will help us again? He hesitated. I can help with the beacon system. But I am no fighter, she smiled. You fight in your own way. Her words unsettled him. He wanted to stay detached, but something about her gaze held warmth that cut through the cold. That night, sleep refused to come. Taryn sat by the heater, staring at the faint glow of the beacon screen. The others rested lightly, armor beside them, weapons close at hand. He could hear them breathe in rhythm like a single heart. In the middle of the night, Mira woke and sat beside him. She looked at the storm through the window, her eyes reflecting the light. You think we are strange, she said softly. Taryn smiled tiredly. Different, maybe, but not strange. In your tongue, my name means seeker, she said. I was the youngest in my pack to earn the mark of the hunt, but I had never seen a human before today. Taryn looked at her. And what do you think of humans now? She thought for a moment. You are soft in voice, but strong in will. When the serpent came, you faced it without fear. That is rare. I was afraid, Taryn admitted, but fear keeps us careful. Mira nodded slowly. In our code, fear is a guide. The brave are those who walk beside it. They sat in silence for a while. Then she said something that made him pause. When I said you were mine, it was not what you think. Among my people, that means I owe you protection. You saved me when the storm struck. Now I guard your life until the vow is paid. Taryn blinked in surprise. You don't owe me anything. I only did what anyone would. Mira's gaze was steady. Not anyone. Some would have closed the door. He wanted to argue but stopped. There was no pride in her tone, only truth. He nodded quietly. By morning, the storm weakened enough to open the door. The world outside was silent and white. The snow had frozen into glass-like sheets that cracked under each step. The horizon shimmered with strange light where the plasma cloud still moved in the distance. Rin gave orders with firm gestures. 2 Huntresses began scanning the sky while another repaired the comm link. Mira and Terran worked together to restore the southern beacon. Terran connected wires while Mira stood guard, spear in hand. She moved with grace and focus, scanning the ridges. He asked, "How long have you hunted the serpent?" 3 cycles, she answered. "It killed one of us during the first. Since then we follow it from world to world." "You could have stopped," he said. She shook her head. "The hunt does not end until the promise is fulfilled. That is the law." He respected their determination. Even if he did not share their customs, he understood what it meant to keep a promise. By midday, the beacon grid was working again. The scanner showed movement near the western ridge. Rin's eyes brightened. "It moves toward the valley. The trail is fresh," the pack gathered quickly. Their armor gleamed in the light of the rising sun. They checked their weapons one last time. Rin turned to Terran. "You have done much for us, human. Stay in your shelter. The storm will pass soon. We will finish our hunt." Terran hesitated. "If you fail, the creature will come here next." Rin gave a small smile. "Then you will see the truth of our strength." The Huntresses moved out in formation, leaving tracks that vanished quickly under blowing snow. Mira stopped at the door and looked back once. Her golden eyes met Terran's. "Keep the fire burning," she said. "We will return." Terran watched until they disappeared into the white horizon. The silence that followed felt heavy. He sat by the heater again, feeling both worry and admiration. These were not just warriors. They were bound by something deeper than duty. As the wind began to rise again, Terran looked at the faint glow of the beacon screen. The movement on the western ridge grew stronger. The sky serpent was real and it was close. He whispered to himself, "Come back safe, all of you." The snowfields of Vereen stretched wide and silent. The morning light was pale, filtered through thin clouds that still burned with faint lightning. The storm had weakened, but the danger had not passed. The Huntresses moved like shadows over the ice, their steps quiet, their eyes alert. Rin led the way with calm focus. Mira stayed near the front, scanning the ridges with her spear ready. The sky serpent's trail glowed faintly in the frost, a twisting pattern of melted ice and scorched snow. The creature's energy left marks wherever it passed. "The tracks are fresh," Rin said. "It is near." One of the older Huntresses, Sarah, pointed toward a valley where the wind swirled in strange circles. "There," she said. "The storm gathers again. It hides within." They moved carefully down the slope. The silence felt heavy. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Back at the hut, Terran watched the beacon readings. The screen flickered with faint movement markers. The southern grid showed a large signal moving near the valley where the Huntresses had gone. His stomach tightened. The creature was heading toward them faster than expected. He opened the comm link trying to reach them, but the plasma interference broke every signal. The screen filled with static. He hit the console in frustration, then took a breath to steady himself. He could not sit and wait. He grabbed his heavy coat, a spare power cell, and the portable pulse beacon he had built from scrap. The beacon could emit energy bursts to attract or distract energy-based creatures. It was risky, but it was the only idea he had. He stepped outside into the cold. The wind cut against his face, but he pressed on. The tracks of the Huntresses were faint, already filling with snow. He followed them toward the valley. Meanwhile, the Huntresses reached a ridge that overlooked a frozen lake. The surface glowed faintly beneath a thin layer of ice. Something large moved beneath it, sending slow waves across the frozen crust. "It hides under the ice," Mira said quietly. Rin raised her weapon. "Prepare charges. We will draw it out." They placed energy mines in a circle around the lake and took cover behind the rocks. Rin gave a sharp command. The charges exploded, breaking the ice into glowing shards. A deep roar rose from below and the lake cracked wide open. From the depths rose the sky serpent. It was vast and terrifying, made of twisting light and shadow, with scales that shimmered like molten glass. Its eyes burned white and arcs of lightning moved across its body. The air around it hummed with power. The Huntresses stood their ground, weapons raised. The serpent opened its mouth and a blast of plasma shot toward the ridge. The explosion threw 2 Huntresses off their feet. Mira rolled aside, shielding her face. Rin shouted orders through the comlink. her voice steady even in the chaos. Hold formation. Aim for the eyes. They fired energy bolts that struck the creature's head. The beams left glowing marks but did little damage. The serpent roared again and dove into the air, circling above them. Each beat of its wings sent waves of force through the valley. Mira saw one of her sisters pinned under a rock and ran to pull her free. The ground cracked beneath her feet as the creature's tail struck nearby. She barely managed to push her comrade to safety before falling to her knees. Terran reached the edge of the valley just in time to see the creature rise into the sky. The sight froze him in awe and fear. It was larger than any machine he had ever seen, its body glowing with energy that made the air ripple. He could see the Huntresses fighting below, small figures against a mountain of light. He knew his pulse beacon might draw the creature's attention, but if he used it wrong, it could kill them all. He took a deep breath and set the beacon to emit high-frequency energy bursts. He aimed it toward the far end of the valley and activated it. The beacon flashed bright blue, sending waves of soundless energy into the air. The serpent turned its head sharply, sensing the new signal. It roared, a sound like thunder mixed with metal. Then it dove toward the beacon, leaving the Huntresses a moment to recover. Rin noticed the change. "Someone is drawing it away," she said. "That human has more courage than sense." Mira looked toward the ridge and saw Terran standing there with the small device in his hands. Her heart jumped in her chest. "He will die if it reaches him." "Then go," Rin said. "You have the fastest step." Mira ran across the ice, her boots sliding but steady. The serpent closed in on the beacon, its body glowing brighter. Terran planted his feet and aimed his small plasma cutter, though he knew it would not do much. He shouted to himself to stay calm, his hands shaking. The serpent crashed down near him, sending shards of ice and snow flying. The force threw him backward. He slid across the ground but managed to hold onto the beacon. The creature reared up, its eyes locking onto him. Before it could strike, Mira leapt between them, throwing her spear. The weapon hit one of the glowing scars on its neck, causing the creature to scream in pain. Terran scrambled to his feet and grabbed a broken cable from the beacon. He jammed it into the creature's wound, releasing a burst of electric current. The serpent thrashed wildly, its body sparking. Mira pulled Terran away before the creature's tail slammed down where he had been. They tumbled behind a snowbank, breathing hard. "You should have stayed in your hut," she said, her voice sharp but not angry. "I could not just sit and wait," Terran replied. "You needed a distraction." Mira shook her head with a faint smile. "You are either brave or foolish. Maybe both." The ground shook again as Rin and the others closed in from the other side. They fired together, focusing on the wound Terran had opened. The serpent roared in pain, its body flickering like a broken star. Rin shouted, "Now, all together." Mira stood and threw her spear again, this time with full strength. The weapon pierced deep into the creature's chest. At the same time, Rin's shot hit the same spot. The serpent let out a final cry that echoed across the valley, then fell back into the frozen lake. The ice broke, swallowing its glowing body as it sank into the depths. The storm clouds began to fade. The wind softened. For a long moment there was only silence. Then Mira turned to Terran. "You fight without armor, without weapon, and yet you helped end a legend. I do not understand your kind." He smiled wearily. "We survive by trying, not by understanding." Rin approached, her expression calm but respectful. "Human Terran," she said, "you have fought beside the Kareth. You have earned a place among the brave." Terran shook his head. "I only helped a little." Rin touched the mark glowing faintly on Mira's arm. "That mark you carry," she said to Mira, "now means more. You owe him not a debt but a bond." Mira lowered her eyes. "I accept it." They began to gather their gear. The broken ice still shimmered with faint light where the serpent had vanished. Terran watched the glow fade and wondered if it was truly gone or only sleeping. As they prepared to leave the valley, Mira looked at him. "When we return to your hut, you will tell me how you built that beacon. Your mind works like a weapon." He nodded, smiling slightly. "Deal." They started back toward the shelter. The snow crunched under their boots. The sky cleared slowly, showing the pale sun. Terran's legs ached and his coat was torn, but he felt alive. For the first time in years, he had done something that mattered. When they reached the hut, the heater still burned and the lights still worked. The Huntresses rested quietly, patching armor and checking wounds. Rin sat near the heater with a thoughtful expression. Mira stood beside Terran as he removed his coat. She looked at him for a long time before speaking. "You fought beside us. That means you are no longer an outsider. I never wanted to be part of anything again, he said. But maybe that was my mistake. She gave a small nod. A pack is not chosen by words. It is made by action. Taryn understood what she meant. The Huntresses were not only warriors. They were bound by trust. And somehow, without meaning to, he had become part of that bond. Outside, the wind carried a softer sound, almost peaceful. The storm had ended, but the memory of the battle stayed bright in their minds. The sky serpent was gone, yet its shadow still lingered in the sky like a scar. Rin rose and looked at the horizon. The hunt is done, she said, but this world still hides many dangers. We rest tonight, then decide our next path. Taryn nodded. You can stay as long as you need. Mira smiled slightly. Careful, human. We might never leave. He laughed quietly. Then I will need a bigger hut. The Huntresses shared a rare smile at that. For the first time since the storm began, there was warmth in the cold air. That night, as the heater hummed softly and the stars shone clear above, Taryn sat near the window. Mira stood beside him, watching the sky. Neither spoke for a long time. There was no need for words. In that moment, Taryn realized something he had not felt in years. He was not alone anymore. The fire inside the small heater glowed steady. The storm had passed, leaving the land silent and white again. The sky was pale blue with streaks of light from the twin suns. The world looked peaceful, but every heart inside the hut carried the memory of the battle. Taryn sat near the heater, cleaning the small pulse beacon that had helped them defeat the sky serpent. The device was cracked and burned, but still faintly humming. He handled it carefully as if it were alive. Across from him, the Kareth Huntresses repaired their armor and checked their weapons. Even after victory, their habits never changed. They were always ready for another fight. Mira sat beside him, sharpening her spear. Her movements were slow and steady, but her eyes kept glancing toward him. There was something different in her look. It was not curiosity now. It was something stronger, something quiet and sure. Rin, their leader, spoke from where she stood near the door. The storm sleeps, but the land still holds danger. We will remain one more day to recover. Then we return to our ship. Taryn looked up. You're leaving already? Rin nodded. Our mission is complete. The sky serpent is gone. We will return to report the hunt's end. The words hit Taryn harder than he expected. He had grown used to their presence. The hut had felt full and alive with them inside. The idea of silence returning made his chest feel strangely empty. You could rest longer, he said. The ship might still need repairs. Rin gave a small smile. You worry for us now, human. That is a sign of kinship. Mira glanced at him with a small grin. He worries because he knows we might break something if left alone. Taryn laughed softly. That too. The mood was lighter for a while. They shared food and stories of other worlds. The Kareth spoke of jungles filled with flying creatures and deserts that burned with endless suns. Taryn listened with wide eyes. The galaxy was far larger and stranger than the small frozen corner he called home. As evening came, Rin stood and raised a small crystal from her pack. It glowed faintly in her hand. Tonight we honor the fallen, she said. Every hunt ends with remembrance. The Huntresses gathered in a circle. Taryn watched quietly as they placed their weapons in front of them and bowed their heads. Rin spoke in a low chant, her voice deep and steady. The air inside the hut seemed to grow still. Mira's expression softened, and for the first time Taryn saw sorrow in her eyes. When the chant ended, the crystal light faded, leaving a calm silence. Rin looked at Taryn. Among our kind, every hunt changes those who survive. You helped us finish this one. That means you are part of the pack now, even if only for a time. Taryn nodded respectfully. That's an honor. Thank you. Rin stepped closer and looked at Mira. The vow between you two must now be sealed. Mira's eyes flickered with surprise. You mean the claim mark? Rin nodded. He saved your life. You saved his. The bond is equal. It must be marked before we leave this world. Taryn looked between them, unsure. What does that mean? Rin turned to him. It is not ownership. It is respect. Among the Kareth, when two share life and danger, they mark one another as kin. It is a promise that their courage is remembered. Mira rose and took a small glowing shard from her belt. The shard pulsed softly with blue light. She stepped closer to Taryn. If you allow, I will mark you. It will not harm you. It only shows that you are part of our story. Taryn hesitated. The moment felt heavy with meaning. He finally nodded. All right. Mira pressed the shard gently against his forearm. A faint blue symbol appeared on his skin, shaped like a curved claw around a star. It glowed for a few seconds, then settled into a soft light. It did not hurt, but it tingled with warmth. Rin placed a hand on his shoulder. You now carry the mark of the Huntress. Wherever you go, if our kind sees it, they will know you stood beside us with courage. Terran looked at the glowing mark. It feels strange. Mira smiled softly. It means you are never alone again. The others nodded in agreement. For them, the mark was sacred. It was a symbol of trust earned through action, not words. Later that night, after the others had rested, Terran sat by the window watching the stars. Mira joined him quietly. The air was cold, but the heater's light made the room glow softly. Do all Kareth make these marks? Terran asked. Only when the bond is real, Mira answered. There is no higher promise than that of the hunt. He turned his arm, looking at the glowing symbol. It's beautiful, she nodded. You wear it well. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind outside. The world felt calm again. For the first time since the storm, Terran allowed himself to rest. He leaned back in his chair and looked up at the stars. Mira watched him for a moment, then said quietly, When we first came to your hut, I thought you were weak. A human alone in the cold. Now I see strength in another form. You face storms without armor, he smiled faintly. I guess we all have our ways of fighting. Rin interrupted from across the room. Get some sleep. The suns will rise soon. We leave after dawn. Terran wanted to protest but said nothing. He knew they had their duty. Still, the thought of their departure filled him with unease. When morning came, the Huntresses prepared their gear. The air outside was calm and bright. Their ship rested a few kilometers away, half buried in snow. Terran helped them pack their supplies. Mira stayed near him, silent but watchful. At the door, Rin turned to him once more. You have our gratitude, human Terran. You gave us shelter when we had none. You stood with us against death. If the stars ever lead you to Kareth space, show your mark. You will be welcomed as one of us. He bowed slightly. Thank you, Rin, I won't forget. She nodded and stepped outside with the others. The snow crunched under their boots as they began the walk toward their ship. Mira lingered at the doorway. You could come with us, she said softly. Our worlds are wide and filled with life. You would not be lonely there. Terran smiled sadly. This world still needs someone to watch over it. The beacons will die if I leave. Mira looked at him for a long time. You hide your heart behind duty. One day you must choose to live, not only survive. He had no answer. She stepped closer and touched the glowing mark on his arm. It flared briefly, brighter than before. Until our paths cross again, she said. Then she turned and followed the others into the light. Terran watched until they vanished into the distance. The wind rose again, carrying snow across the plain. The hut felt empty once more, but the silence was different now. It was not the silence of loneliness. It was the silence after something meaningful. He went back inside and checked the systems. Everything worked. The beacons glowed steadily, sending their signals into the sky. He touched the mark on his arm and smiled. It pulsed faintly as if alive. Days passed. The weather stayed calm, but he could not stop thinking about the Huntresses. Sometimes he thought he heard faint echoes in the wind, like distant voices calling across the ice. At night, the mark on his arm glowed brighter when storms gathered far away. He wondered if that meant they were near, fighting again somewhere among the stars. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Terran climbed a ridge above his hut. The snow reflected orange light. He looked at the horizon where their ship had flown away. The sky was clear and a few stars had already appeared. He raised his arm toward them. I hope you are safe, he whispered. The wind answered with a soft sigh. He turned and walked back to his hut. The small home that once felt like a cage now felt like part of a much larger world. Inside, he began to work on a new project. He gathered spare parts from the broken beacon and started building a communication array strong enough to reach beyond the planet's orbit. He did not know if the Kareth would hear it, but he wanted to try. As he worked, he remembered Mira's words. Live, not only survive. The thought gave him quiet strength. By midnight, the new beacon was ready. He activated it and a thin blue light shot upward into the sky. The signal pulsed like a heartbeat. Far above, among the stars, a faint shimmer answered. It might have been static. It might have been something more. Terran smiled and sat back in his chair. The mark on his arm glowed softly in rhythm with the signal. The storm had taken many things from him, but it had also given him something he had not known he was missing. A connection. A purpose. Snow fell lightly across the white plains of Vereen. The wind whispered between the broken ridges, carrying the quiet hum of the old beacons that Terran had repaired. The storms had stopped for many weeks now. The land was calm, the sky clear. Terran stood outside his hut, wrapped in a thick coat, watching the suns rise above the horizon. The light painted the snow in gold. He breathed in the cold air and listened to the silence that had once been his only companion. Now it felt different. It no longer felt empty. Every time he looked at the sky, he thought of the Huntresses who had left their mark on his life. The blue symbol on his arm still glowed faintly. Sometimes it was soft and calm. Sometimes it pulsed like a heartbeat. He did not fully understand its meaning, but he knew it was alive in some way. It connected him to them no matter how far away they had gone. After the battle with the Sky Serpent, Terran's life had slowly returned to its rhythm. He checked the beacon towers every morning, repaired the energy lines, and sent reports into space even though no one might be listening. He talked to the wind as if it could carry his words to distant stars, yet every time the horizon darkened with storm clouds, his heart quickened. It was not fear anymore. It was hope. The last time a storm had come, it had brought the Huntresses. Somewhere deep inside, he wished that another storm would bring them again. One evening, while he was fixing the power cell near the North Ridge, his small scanner beeped. The screen flashed with a strange signal. It was not from the beacon network. It was something new, a rhythmic pulse that matched the pattern of his mark. He froze. His breath misted in the cold air. He tapped the screen again. The signal was growing stronger, moving through the sky. Terran looked up. The clouds began to glow with a pale blue light. The air hummed softly. Then he saw it. A ship descending slowly through the clouds, its metal surface shining in the sunset. It was not one of the old human crafts. It was Kareth design, curved and elegant like the shape of a bird in flight. His heart leapt. He ran back toward his hut as the ship landed on the snowfield nearby. The engines hummed and then went quiet. The ramp lowered, releasing a gust of warm air. From the light inside stepped Mira. She wore new armor, polished and shining, marked with symbols Terran did not recognize. Behind her were two new Huntresses, younger than the others he had met before. They looked around with alert eyes, their weapons slung across their backs. Mira saw Terran and smiled. "The storm returns," she said. "And so do we." Terran stopped a few steps away, unsure whether to speak or bow. His voice came out softer than he expected. "I thought you might never come back." "We've finished many hunts," Mira said, walking closer. "But one bond does not fade. The mark guided us when your signal reached the edge of our space." Terran looked at his arm. The blue symbol glowed brighter now, alive with energy. "So you received it?" She nodded. "We heard your call. You sent a pulse of courage into the dark. It reached us." The younger Huntresses stepped forward, curious about him. One of them, a tall figure with bronze armor, spoke. "Is this the human who faced the Sky Serpent with bare hands?" Mira nodded proudly. "The same one." The younger one smiled with respect. "Then he is worthy of the stories." Terran laughed quietly. "Stories? You make it sound grander than it was." "To us," Mira said, "it was more than grand. You faced a storm and a creature that many warriors feared. You showed heart without armor. That is not forgotten." They entered the hut together. Mira looked around, noticing small changes. Terran had rebuilt the place. The walls were reinforced, the heater stronger, and a small metal device blinked softly near the window. "You have been busy," she said. Terran nodded. "I built a long-range transmitter. It can send a message beyond this system. I thought maybe one day you would hear it." Mira looked at him with a calm smile. "You hoped, and hope is strength." They sat together near the heater while the younger Huntresses explored outside. The suns were setting again, turning the sky orange and silver. The warmth of the room made the air feel alive. Terran asked, "Why did you come back? Another hunt?" Mira's expression softened. "Not this time. We came for you, for me," he said, surprised. She nodded. "The Kareth Council spoke of a new mission. One that needs both skill and heart. We need someone who sees danger differently, someone who values life over victory." "I spoke your name." Terran looked down at his hands. You want me to leave Vereen? The galaxy is wide, she said. There are storms beyond the stars. Some we cannot face alone. You once faced one here. You can face more out there. He thought about her words. The idea both excited and frightened him. Vereen was the only home he had known, but he also remembered the emptiness of long nights, the silence that stretched between the storms. What about my duty here? He asked quietly. The beacons need someone to maintain them. Mira reached across the table and placed her hand on his. The beacons will last without you for a time. You have given this world more than enough. Now it is time to give your courage to another place. He met her eyes. Would I belong among your kind? You already do, she said softly. The mark chose you long ago. Outside, the younger Huntresses called something in their language. Mira stood and looked toward the window. We leave when the second sun rises. The journey is long, but there is room for one more. Terran's mind swirled with thoughts. He walked outside, feeling the cold wind touch his face. The ship stood silent and strong on the snowfield. Above it, the stars shimmered faintly. He had always dreamed of seeing them up close. He looked back at his hut. The walls held his memories, years of solitude, storms survived and quiet strength. But now he felt that those memories were not chains. They were roots, and roots could grow beyond one world. He turned to Mira. If I come with you, what will I be? Her answer was simple. You will be who you already are, a hunter of storms. That night, Terran packed what little he owned, a few tools, a small beacon crystal, and a photograph from the old colony days. The mark on his arm glowed brighter with each step he took toward the ship. Before entering, he turned back one last time. The hut stood under the twin moons, small but steady. He felt a quiet goodbye in his heart. Inside the ship, the air was warmer and filled with a soft hum. The controls glowed with flowing symbols. The younger Huntresses guided him to a seat near the front. Mira stood beside the pilot's console, her eyes fixed on the sky. Ready? She asked. Terran took a deep breath. Yes, the engines came alive and the ground began to fall away. Through the window, he watched his world shrink beneath them. The snowfields looked like white silk, the mountains like small ripples of silver. Then the clouds swallowed it all and only stars remained. Hours passed as they moved through the dark. Mira explained the plan. They were traveling to a distant frontier, where strange signals had been detected near a derelict station. Many believed it was a trap. The Kareth saw it as a test. Terran listened carefully. His hands moved over the controls as she showed him how to monitor the systems. His human knowledge of old colony machines made him useful. The younger Huntresses respected his calm precision. When the ship crossed the final jump gate, a wave of blue light filled the cabin. Terran looked out and saw a vast nebula stretching before them. Clouds of red and violet gas twisted around broken metal shapes, drifting in silence. That is the station, Mira said. We arrive at the edge of another storm. He stared at the view, filled with awe. It's beautiful. Beauty often hides danger, she replied. The ship moved slowly toward the ruins. The light from the nebula danced across their faces. Terran felt the same thrill he had felt when the sky serpent appeared. But now he was not afraid. He was ready. Mira looked at him and smiled. You see, human, this is what the mark means. It leads you from one storm to the next, never letting your spirit rest. Terran smiled back. Then maybe I was meant for storms after all. As they entered the glowing mist, the mark on his arm flared again, brighter than ever. It pulsed in rhythm with the hum of the ship, as if the galaxy itself had recognized his courage. In that moment, Terran understood something simple and true. Strength was not in armor or weapons. It was in standing firm when the world turned against you. It was in kindness offered without reason. It was in hope that never faded. The stars ahead burned brighter and the Huntresses moved to their stations. The journey had begun again, and this time Terran was not alone.